friends. So one of the most frequently asked questions I get is, how can I be a successful grower? I have a black thumb. And basically my answer to that every single time is you have to start with healthy soil, and which can be really difficult to come by because a lot of the soils that we source from big box stores in the bags, the pre-mixed stuff, it's crap. So what I'm going to share with you today is our farm's recipe for soil that is really good for any type of wet-loving herbs, really good for dry-loving herbs or well-drained soil-loving herbs. Basically things that you can use in your growing practices and in your garden space, your potted plants, to take your growing to the next level. So it's our super secret recipe that I'm going to share with you today. All right, so before you mix up your big batch of soil, you're going to want a couple things just to have on hand to make life easier on yourself. First and foremost, you want to make sure that you have a list of these ingredients, which we'll go over more in depth as we go on with the video, but just so you can have a general idea of what we're going to be talking about, these are the general components of soil, or good soil. A lot of these you can purchase over at your local gardening center. You can find them usually at nurseries, where will also be there. Two sources that I like to turn to in Texas is going to be Natural Gardener, and then also Callahan's General Store. Both of those are excellent sources to get these products from, and it helps to shop local. You want to go more that route. So the other thing that you want to make sure that you get is a big blue tarp. This is going to take up a lot of space. So this recipe in general is about 25 gallons that we're going to be mixing up. And that's soil that you can use in your raised bed gardens. You can use that in your potted plants at home. You can use that in your garden just to kind of spruce up the soil a little bit. So options are endless. Or if you even just want to seed plants in it as well, it's a good medium for that. But make sure you have a big blue tarp. We're going to be using up all the space. You want to make sure you're in a well-ventilated area. Cue fans, perfect timing. And then you also want to make sure that, one second. Much better. Okay. You also want to make sure that you have something that I'm sure we all have plenty of right now, masks. So we're going to be kicking up a lot of dust. There's going to be a lot of particulate that's going to be flowing through the air, and you want to make sure that you protect your respiratory system. So a mask is the best way to do that. Next, you're going to want some measuring tools. So basically for this recipe, you're going to need a 1 cup measuring cup. You're also going to possibly need a half cup. You can eyeball it, or else you can just kind of go off of what you feel like is a half cup. The measurements in this don't have to be exact, but it helps to have a general kind of basis to go off of. Then we also have our measuring spoons. That's basically just like tablespoon, teaspoon, all that jazz. Okay, and the other major thing that we're gonna need is a 5-gallon bucket. And lastly, what you're also gonna need is a shovel. So this is going to be really helpful for you as we go and mix up your soil. You want to make sure that you have one that has a flat bottom as opposed to one that's more rounded or with a pointy bottom, because we're going to be doing a lot of scoop and turns and scoop and turns. So this is your best friend. Great soil starts with a solid foundation, and really there's 2 routes that you can take when building your base to your soil. You can either use sphagnum peat moss, which is generally a little bit easier to find, or you can use cocoa coir. We tend to go more toward cocoa coir as it's more sustainable for the environment. Also, it has antifungal properties, whereas sphagnum peat moss is strip mine and harmful to the environment. All right, first we have our big block of coconut coir. And by big block, I mean definitely this thing's huge. So it is pretty dense. You can't really break it. It's 5 kilograms, and you can't crack it. You can't kick it. It's so dense. You can't do much with it. So we have to come up with a different technique to kind of rehydrate or break up the particles so we can actually use them in our soil base. So this is one of the key components to our foundation. And basically, I'm going to take this big block and we are going to rest it in our water bucket.
Oh yeah, by the way, you're going to need a big bucket of water. But anyway, so coconut coir is basically the fibrous pith of the coconut husk that's been ground fine. It holds up to 8 to 9 times its weight in water and tends to absorb water real quick.
All right, so it took a couple rounds of hydration, but that 1 block of cocoa coir gave us over 2 full 5-gallon buckets, so 10 gallons altogether of beautiful base and foundation for our soil, which is perfect for our recipe because the first part of it is 2 parts either peat or coconut coir. All right, so that brings us to our next ingredient, and that is beautiful, fresh compost. Now, I do recommend, if you can, to go through and sift your compost if this is something that you're pulling from your pile, either from your backyard compost pile or a friend's compost pile, or even working with different companies like Organics by Gosh here in Austin, Texas. These are really great options to go for just having good quality, nutritious compost that is really going to add the nutrients and the backbone to our beautiful soil.
Sifting your compost can help remove clumps and also weed seeds.
We're still building the basis or the foundation of our soil, and basically what we need now, since we have all this lush, nutrient-dense material that's going to really help with water retention, we need to balance that out with a little perlite. And basically what perlite is it's a volcanic glass that's actually been heated to 1600 degrees until it pops like popcorn. This creates, this whole process basically creates a really porous and lightweight material that allows water to drain through it rapidly. So in this case, in this recipe, we're going to be using 1 3/4 part perlite to our entire recipe.
Perlite is a great soil additive for those plants that need fast draining soil like white sage, succulents, and citrus. But you want to use a little bit less, maybe just 1 part, for those water-loving plants like marshmallow and gotu kola.
All right, and next, to balance out the perlite that we just put in, we need to incorporate 1/4 part vermiculite. So here you'll see it's really shiny, beautiful, and just like perlite, vermiculite is basically like a laminate material or a laminate mineral that's been treated like heat, only it expands out to accordion shapes. So basically this allows for more nutrient retention within your soil. It allows for water to be retained in the soil a bit longer, while just overall just kind of aerating the soil in general.
Vermiculite is pretty rad. Even though it retains water really well, it won't rot, it doesn't mold, it's non-toxic, and it won't deteriorate. Also, it looks like gold.
That step's done, and now we just are pretty much done, right? I mean, this looks like potting soil. Just stick some seeds in it and call it a day, right? Not so much. So this is where a lot of soil companies will actually call it quits and just give you this product. But they're missing out on the added nutrients that really will make your plants vibrant, healthy, and prosperous. So we're going to get into some of the soil amendments to really take your soil up to the next level so it doesn't completely suck. First, we're going to start off with 1 cup of lime. And this is where your measuring tool comes in handy. So 1 cup of lime, and I pour that out right over top of our pile. All right, so basically what I like to use is Dolomite lime, and you again can find this over at nursery centers, garden centers, basically anywhere that they have plant products. And Dolomite lime is going to help balance out the pH of our soil, because right now it's a little bit more on the acidic side, which hinders the nutrients from actually entering and being absorbed by the plant roots. So alkaline is going to be, or the alkaline base that we're adding is going to be our Dolomite lime. And as we sprinkle that over top, make sure that it's clear to disperse. And now come to think of it, this is a perfect time to grab that mask, because you definitely don't want to inhale this stuff. It won't do you any favors.
Dolomitic lime is calcium magnesium carbonate, and its high magnesium content can actually disrupt Central Texas's already alkaline soils, so I don't recommend using it as a fertilizer in your garden until you perform a soil test to check for deficiencies.
Our next soil additive is going to be called green sand, also known as glauconite. Basically what it is mineral deposits from the ocean floor, and this enhances the soil structure altogether of our whole pile by adding in more nutrients, and it also really helps with root development and root growth.
Green sand is a great garden additive if you have hard clay soils or sandy soils, as it helps to increase moisture retention. It also helps with disease resistance and plant health.
All right, so the next additive in our soil recipe is going to be 2 cups worm castings. And basically worm castings are really helpful in promoting more microorganisms in the soil, which basically helps to enhance the soil health overall.
Worm castings are a fertilizer that won't burn your plants. You can add it to your garden and it will discourage root rot. It provides pest control against mealybugs, aphids, and mites.
Whew. Okay, now we get into some tricky territory. So next we have on our recipe list a 4th cup of blood meal. And blood meal is actually the powdered inert portion of blood, of animal blood, which is a little bit especially if you're vegan. So there are vegan options that I'll get into kind of at the end of the video. But for now, a 4th cup of blood meal is going to add in a huge boost of nitrogen to our plants. And nitrogen is essential for all that green leafy growth, and it's what helps to basically help your plant to photosynthesize and just be vibrantly, beautifully green.
Blood meal can be a game changer for those plants that are deficient in nitrogen. It also deters moles, squirrels, and deers who don't like the smell of blood.
We also have bone meal that we're going to be adding in, specifically a 1/2 cup of bone meal. And bone meal, of course, is what you would expect. It's the ground up bones. But basically what this is a huge boost of phosphorus for our plants, which counterbalances the nitrogen that we just added in. Phosphorus is really helpful for those plants that have flowering buds, that are also fruit producers, because it basically kind of ups the ante in the floral department and allows them to have big, beautiful, abundant blooms. So phosphorus is very, very important.
Bone meal releases phosphorus in the soil for up to 4 months and should be added to your garden soil if you're growing anything like tomatoes or fruit-bearing plants or just plain flowers.
Now we can get a little bit more specific with different types of plants that we're going to be actually putting into our soil. So I have here play sand or fine sand, which is going to be added in. So if you're working with plants that need really fast draining soil and are more susceptible to root rot, then you want to use about 3 quarts or 12 cups of play sand in your mix. If you're working with plants that are a little bit more water lovers, that they want to hold on to that water, like marshmallow, like horsetail, etc., then I would probably cut that down to about 6 cups. And we're just going to mix it up in here. Play sand will increase drainage and just help to break up any soil compaction. We are off to our last ingredient in this fine soil recipe. So the last thing that we're going to be adding in are the mycorrhizae inoculants. And basically what this is are beneficial organisms that are from the fungi family. And in this recipe, so each jar is going to have a little bit of a different call, and basically what this calls for is for every 5 gallons, we're going to add in 2 to 4 tablespoons. Get your spoons out. We're going to add 2 to 4 tablespoons of the mycorrhizae inoculant to our grand pile. So we know, since this is going to be about 25 gallons, that we're going to add in anywhere from 10 to about 20 different tablespoons of the mycorrhizae inoculant. So just make sure you read the labels because it's all a little different.
Fungi mycelium form a symbiotic relationship with plants through their plant roots. Fungi benefit from the carbon compounds that are produced through photosynthesis, and in turn, they help the plant roots absorb nutrients and water.
And now, it's mixing time! There you have it, a big, beautiful pile of soil. Now that we have everything mixed up, I recommend going through and giving it a nice shower, letting it really soak in, just so you can kind of activate those mycorrhizae inoculants. You can help the microorganisms to start growing and feeding and really kind of wake everything up. So I usually will water this down before we use it and then let it sit overnight just to kind of cure. If you are using this soil for seed trays like we are going to, this is going to be for our marshmallow, this is going to be for our moringa, all kinds of great spring herbs that I'm super excited about. Oh, and ashwagandha, can't wait. So sometimes we end up with clumps in the soil. The best way to go about that and switching that out is to go ahead and get a screen. And this can be as simple as just like a screen door that you put over top, and just put your soil on that and rub it on top so that you're getting a nice fine grind in with your seed babies. And also if there's any stuck minerals, like sometimes the lime will clump or the green sand, this will help break up those clumps so that everything's well dispersed. But overall, you can just fill up your seed trays just like that. Beautiful. And there you have it, you're ready to roll. And you're going to have the most bountiful, beautiful plants that you've ever seen come out of the soil. So it's something to really get excited about. You're gonna feel like a real green thumb master gardener.